Well, good morning, family. Happy rainy Monday in Fresno, California. Hey, have you ever wondered yourself if is God really wise? Is he really just? Is the things that he does it make sense and line up with what we think should be happening to us, should be happening to others? And if you've ever thought this, well, guess what? We are in good good company, because this is exactly what the book of Job addresses. And that's what we're diving in for our 747 Reading the Bible in a Year plan. We are in the book of Job, chapters 1 and 2. And so this is going to lay the groundwork. Hello, Debbie. This is going to lay the groundwork of what we're going to be reading over the next couple of weeks in the book of Job. And so this is going to set the stage, and that's what I want to open us with today. Is God really wise? Is he just in the things that he does? And I love that this book is going to uncover it for us as we continue to read. So the book of Job is one of what they would say is the three books of literature. We have Proverbs, we have Ecclesiastes, and then we get to the book of Job. And once we get to the book of Job, that is really what we're looking, that is, God's going to reveal to us, that is proven to us that he is a wise God, that he is a just God, and he is intentional about that, and the knower and sovereign God of all things. And so we find out that there is really no author to this book. We do know that the author is Hebrew. We do know that the author is a well-traveled and heavy experienced writer. We know that they have a wealth of knowledge, and they use there's like a poetry written form in here. You're going to see that when you read, it's like a repetitive thing that is happening, and that's intentional in this book of Job. But the most important key thing that we want to take away from this entire book of Job is going to be looking for wisdom, and we're going to be looking at the words comfort. Those are going to be repetitive throughout this entire book, which is awesome. It's going to reveal to us where comfort comes from. And because where we find that comfort, we find it in God's wisdom. And so that's going to be revealed to us as we continue to read on through the week. So I want to definitely dive in and go from there. So we're like in chapters 1 and 2. And it begins, the chapters 1 through 5 begin to kind of give the groundwork for who Job is, what is happening in his life at the time. So they're really setting the stage for everything that is to come. So it gives a brief description of Job's character. It names him as someone that is blameless, someone that is upright, and he is one who is feared by God and turns away from evil. That's the very first verse that we read about Job. So we know that this was also mentioned about other people like Noah, people like Abraham that we read in scripture that have these same words that are attached to them. And then not only that, but we also see that he has this holy reverence for the Lord. So when we see that someone fears the Lord, it's not out of fear or scared of what we tend to think of that word, but it is like a holy reverence that they have for the Lord. And so this is what is described of Job. We also see that he has great prosperity. We see he's got a list of his sheep, his camels, his yoke of oxen, his donkeys. We see that he has servants. So he is a man of very much heavy prosperity in what happens. And so as soon as we leave that and we get further in, we're in chapter 1, verse 6. But as we keep reading now, we're getting to the testing part. So we get to see who Job is, the man that God has made him to be. We see that he has lots of prosperity. And now we're going to see what happens in all of this. Where is God's wisdom in it? Where is his justice in it? And so we move from Job into this heavenly court meeting that it says in verse 6. It says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them." And so when they're talking about this in other translations, it's referenced as like a heavenly court that's meeting. And so what this is, and it says the sons of God, it's referencing to like the heavenly beings, along with Satan joining them in. So it would be like if a council was coming before a king. So they are having this meeting and they begin to have this discussion. And so Satan's referenced as kind of like an adversary, someone that is getting at. But we also notice that if we keep on reading through here, the Lord begins to ask Satan, from where have you come? And Satan answers the Lord and he says, from going to and fro on the earth and walking up and down on it. Where do we see this to and fro along the earth. We see that reference in Genesis from the very beginning. And so we see that Satan is being referenced as the serpent in the beginning of the Bible. And so in this dialogue that is happening between the Lord and between Satan, Satan is suggesting that Job only fears the Lord. He is only obedient to the Lord because the Lord is blessing him with all the things he has, because he has prosperity, because he has an abundant surplus of resources to him. Good morning, Steve. And so he's saying that if you were to remove all those things, Lord, he will not serve you. He will curse your name and he will turn his back on you. And so what's really interesting, if you read on through, and he continues to see, verses 10, a little bit through, it says, you have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased the land, but stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse your face. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. So what's happening here, and I think it's so interesting, and maybe we miss sometimes, is that Satan has to actually ask permission from God in order to do what he is about to do, in order to test Job, which tells us that that Satan still understands his place and that he is still underneath God, that he still has to answer to that authority. It's not greater than him and he's not more powerful than God. So he still has to ask, and God gives permission for this because he knows where Job is, and it's almost like he doesn't even doubt that Job is going to question what God's wisdom is about. It doesn't mean like he doubts that God isn't going to be there for Job. So what a test. And so he has to actually ask for permission. And as we continue on in verse 13, this is where it begins to happen. So the property, and Job is being hit on all sides. You have the Chaldeans coming in. You have the Sabeans coming in. They're taking his property. They're ruining everything. We have a fire coming down from heaven that burns it. We have a wind gust that comes in from the east that wipes out his house, that wipes out his whole entire family. And you have these messengers that are literally coming wave after wave. Like as soon as one done, there's not even a moment for Job to breathe, but we have these things continually happening and coming. And so he is hit on all sides and he has lost everything. I know for me, I would be like, Lord, where are you? Like, what is going on? And we see Job's response in verse 20. And it says that Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell on the ground. And what did he do? He worshiped. He worshiped. So this is where Job it's his confession time. It's his confidence time of trusting in the Lord. Like he turns to the Lord to give him his grief by. At that time when you were grieving, you would shave your head and tear the robes, and you would put on this drapery that would people would know that you were in a season or in a time of grieving. It was a resemblance of that. And then he worships, meaning, man, I trust in your wisdom, Lord. I'm suffering. This is terrible, but I trust in who you are and I trust your wisdom. So again, we see something repeat again. We see the heavenly hosts come together with the Lord. We see Satan again adjourn with the Lord in the heavenly court. We see again Satan now coming at the same thing. We're saying, he's saying, Job, it was just because it was his outer stuff, the skin of his skin. It's just the first skin. It's just his property. It's just his family. But if you were to affect his body, if you were to give him physical harm, we definitely know, God, he would turn his back on you, that he would blame you for everything that is happening to him. And so again, we see the Lord give permission to Satan to go ahead and afflict Job with these sores all over his body, but not to the point of death. So we see him be able to have this opportunities, and the Lord still say and draw attention to the enemy that yes, these things were taken and these things were done, but can I still draw your attention to my son Job? Can I still draw attention that he is blameless, he is upright, his integrity is still holding? And so this is what he draws his attention to. And so Satan sees that as the challenge. Well, let's do something else to see if we can get rid of him. And so Satan goes out of the presence of the Lord, and he, in verse 7 and 8, he struck Job with loathsome sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took a piece of broken pottery which to scrape himself while he sat in the ashes. And then we see this interesting dialogue between Job and his wife. it would make sense, her response in all of our humaneness, right? In all of our humanity. It says in verse 9, and then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die. Let's just blame God and be done with this. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. He's still trusting in the Lord in this moment. And even her question to him is doubting. What she is doubting in Job is the same things that God keeps saying that Job is the same things that God is hopeful in Job, that he is blameless, that he is upright, that he is standing in integrity. So the same thing that she is doubting that Job is, and that he's not what this seems to be, those are the very things that the Lord keeps impressing to Satan, that no. This is what he is, and he is able to do this. And so we see that. And then in our final, in chapter 2, our final little verses that happen here. So now all this has happened. Job has lost everything in the face of what has to come. We see that not only is he now afflicted with sores, he's lost his property, his family has perished, he absolutely has nothing. And we see his 3 friends come in to be some sort of a comfort for him. So we see this in verse 11 at the end. It says, they made an appointment together to come to show him sympathy and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they didn't recognize him. I could only imagine what Job would have looked like at that moment. Remember, he's shaved his head. He has these robes. He has these sores all over his body. Not only that, but his countenance is bearing the heavy weight of all the tragedy, the circumstances, the grief that is all over, that he is just bearing internally, that is now manifesting externally within him. So we can only imagine that they even had to shift to try and see, is this really Job that we've come to comfort? And it says, and as they raised their voices and wept, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their head towards the heaven. And they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great. So even in then, they didn't even have the right words to give to Job. I mean, there are moments where it's like, the best we can do is to just sit and wait. But as we're going to find out, they sat and wait for 7 days and 7 nights, which is also this complete time of mourning that we see. So they were there for a really good chunk of time. But as we're going to find out as we continue to read in the book of Job, is that this is going to set the stage for the rest of the book. We're going to find these friends bringing some challenges to Job. We're going to find that they themselves will begin to question him and his faith in the Lord and who he is trusting in, and even to the point of blaming him for what is happening to him. And so we will uncover that as we continue to read. But my challenge for us today out of the Lord's reading, out of Job, and as we see literally in just these 2 chapters that he has endured so much, and the Lord is still bringing attention to that he is blameless, and that he is holding on to his integrity in the Lord, that he is trusting in the Lord's wisdom, even when all these things have come at him, that he is not deserving of these things, that it seemed like all things were set on the stage for him, and that God loves him. But that God also trusted in how Job trusted in him. And so as we continue to read this book, we are going to see God's wisdom unfold. We are going to see how God is our great comforter, and that he can be with us in all things, even in the hard things. When Job did not understand and he didn't know why the things, it wasn't even an automatic blame of the Lord. It was, I'm going to grieve with the Lord. I'm going to take it to the Lord, and I'm going to worship you. You were the giver. Job is saying, you were the giver of all my possessions. You were the giver of my family. You were the giver of all my wealth and prosperity. You were the giver of where I am and what I am doing. And so I will still continue to praise you, even if I may not understand it right now, Lord. I trust in your sovereign wisdom. And maybe that's you today. Maybe there's things coming at you at all sides, like there was Job, like there's no time to breathe. It's one thing after another. But would I challenge you today that just as we're seeing in these introductory chapters of Job, that would you still continue to press and trust in the Lord and know that his promises will hold true, that his wisdom over your life is all sovereign, and that I promise you that what he is doing is not because he is careless or that he is unjust. but he does have your best intentions at hand, and there's bigger things at work that maybe we don't always see, but to trust in the comforter of all things, to trust in the wisdom of a sovereign God that is omnipresent, that is with us in heaven and is with us here. And that he is fighting for you. And it will be revealed as we continue to see through Job's struggles to give us encouragement. So bless you guys. Walk in courage this week. Walk in the Lord's wisdom this week. Run to him when you need to. And we will see you guys tomorrow morning, 7:47. Make sure that you like the video, as Pastor always says, and make sure you share this with someone that may need encouragement or trying to understand the book of Job as well. All right, family. We'll see you later.